Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, welcome into today's program. So today on the show, we have computer and technology news for both segments. Still working on getting the booking all caught up. The holidays are, well, they were great. Let's just say that. So everyone, hey, welcome into the program. ComputerAmerica.com. I should definitely mention that. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, all the shows. You can find everything there, including links to today's articles, any products that we discuss, any topics that we talk about. Everything will be at ComputerAmerica.com. That's the best place to find it. And hey, you should be good to go from there. While you're there, be sure to check out the podcast, check out the video feed. Of course, we also stream over at twitch.tv/ComputerAmerica whenever we do the show live, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And last but not least, find us on social media. Helps us out a lot. And hey, you get to stay up to date with what it is that we're doing here. So everyone, hey, welcome into the program one last time, and want to go ahead and just get things started. So everyone, computer and technology news brought to you by Computer America. Here we go. So everyone, we have a ton of different articles, things that have been happening over the past couple of weeks, but also a lot of these are from today and updates to today. And I thought that we would lead with one that I honestly thought that it was just kind of in the ether. It wasn't actually possible. And well, lo and behold, they did it. They actually did it. The mad lads over at Google, they unionized. I guess this is according to this article here from The Verge and, kind of what we know about it so far. Yesterday, we were talking in kind of broad terms about what a Google union would look like. They were looking to, kind of bring these people forward and get this started, and looks like they have officially, filed to become a union. And by the way, as I understand it, Google and Alphabet, I should say the Alphabet Workers Union, which is what this is now known as, Alphabet did not want this to happen. I don't think many of these collective tech firms want this to happen because, let's face it, when you have, I think they said they had somewhere in the neighborhood of like 22,000 employees, if you can if you can be the size to facilitate 22,000 employees and you can talk to each one of those one-on-one and negotiate like that, I know that collective bargaining was not in their, collective bargaining was not in the terms of the union, but being able to share wages, show how much everyone is, try to close pay disparity among their own workers, that's going to help the workers out immensely. And yeah, let's see what's actually going to happen here. So this is an article from TechCrunch, and I'm sorry, not TechCrunch, The Verge. The Verge, and they just came out with this about an hour ago, talking about, on Monday, obviously, 230 Google employees announced that they were forming a union with the Communication Workers of America. It's open to employees and contractors at Alphabet, Google's parent company. As a minority union, it doesn't need to go through a formal legal process in order to exist. It just needs to announce itself. That part is done. World, meet the Alphabet Workers Union. Obviously, there's a lot more that this is not like a full-fledged union, but it will offer some of the protections that more traditional unions have to offer, just not all of the benefits. Now, the news prompted a wave of support from Bernie Sanders, Ellen Pao, who, of course, is the former founder, CEO of Reddit. I don't think she was a founder. CEO of Reddit, and, of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It also led to some questions. What is a minority union? Isn't 230 members rather small? And why is the Communication Workers of America involved? Which are all very good questions because, like I said, 22,000 employees, 230 of which are now unionized. Seems like this could be stomped out pretty quickly, and I'm concerned about what this movement could actually, how can this movement actually grow with such a small number of members? So, first things first, where did this union come from? Over the past 3 years, Google employees have been organizing major walkouts and protests to oppose the company's decision to work with the Pentagon. We went over these issues yesterday. They include improving the United States military's capabilities to conduct drone strikes in war zones. They were concerned about the former executive $90 million payout, golden parachute, after he was let go for sexual harassment claims. $90 million seems like a pretty good reward for doing something so terrible. And then, of course, the censored search engine that they were working for in China, which I believe was codenamed Dragonfly, if you'd like to know more about that. Obviously, a company that is founded in America and supposedly has freedom of speech deeply ingrained in it, being the company that is going to help Google or help China censor information is very much the antithesis of what an American-led company should be. So, now, more recently, employees have stood up against Google's firing of the prominent AI ethicist Timnit Gebru. Now, union organizers want to unite all the efforts under a single umbrella, and they're tired of staging individual walkouts. I guess they have so many things that they can walk out on, they would never get anything actually done. So here we are. Now, they mentioned that with all this being said, they are now what is known as a minority union. What is that? Well, they said that they don't need to go through the National Labor Relations Board and hold a vote to convince the majority of employees to sign on. Because as we said, even if it were just the employees, they would need something like over 6,000 people to vote for this. And obviously, Google has in the past shown that they are willing to check the emails, the communications. They have done things where they have, specifically looked for people trying to organize these efforts within the company and taken action against them. So it would be very, very hard to convince 6,000 people to potentially put their entire careers at risk for something like this. And, enter minority union. They say that Google workers are taking immediate advantage of the power of a union. This structure puts the emphasis on employee organizing rather than politics and negotiations, which can come later. The workers told the New York Times that it was primarily an effort to give structure and longevity to activism at Google rather than to negotiate for a contract. So I guess what they're saying is that they're working on these issues, a lot of them that we just outlined once again, and they're trying to, really make the issues the focus rather than, any kind of, more pay for the workers or things like that, or any kind of collective bargaining like I was mentioning. No, they're really focused on the things that they were already taking action against, and now they're bringing it all together. So, yep, you can see that there. And now, with that being said, they have what's the benefit of that? We already went over that. So let's go ahead and see if anything else has happened like this in tech, because this happening at Google is a huge thing, because Google is one of the largest tech companies to have this kind of happen to them. And there have been talks in the past about Facebook employees and others and other large tech companies, this happening to them, and especially Amazon as well. No such luck, though. The only ones that were able to pull this off, as far as I know, were Google. So let's talk about this. They have an excerpt saying that in 2017, security guards at Google and Facebook had their union recognized and fought through a long contract negotiation. In 2019, the Google cafeteria staff employed by vendor Bon Appetit won their union election. And in 2019, a group of 80 contract office workers in Pittsburgh voted to join the United Steelworkers, forming Google's very first worker union. So, small victories. Obviously, security guards and cafeteria workers are, important positions, but at the same time, that's not the tech-focused group of the coders and the people that are being, really at the heart of Google's business model. And so for that, they mentioned that in 2020, workers at Kickstarter unionized and becoming the first union comprised of white-collar full-time employees in the tech industry. But Kickstarter is a small company with less than 200 employees. Not really compared to, again, and by the way, I was saying something like 22,000. I took off a zero for no reason. 123,000 full-time employees and 130,000 contractors. So about 250,000 employees. So, the only other tech company, like they said, Kickstarter was able to do this with less than 200 employees. Scale that up to now 250,000. And if something like this can happen at Google, then I would not be surprised to see other California-based tech companies looking into this, including Facebook, Amazon, and Apple. So, it's unions are back in, back in action. Now, with that being said, the article goes into great detail. We'll throw the rest of this into the show notes, which you can see there. They mentioned how has Google responded to the union. Google issued a statement saying, of course, our employees have protected labor rights that we support, but if AWU, which is again the Alphabet Workers Union, continues to grow, the company will likely change its tune. Google already hired IRI consultants, and they're consultants that are specifically brought in. This was published actually about a year and a half ago. But they are consultants that are specifically brought in to to bust up unions, to make sure that they don't form, if any kind of union ballot initiative is put forward, they gather intelligence, they gather any kind of dirt that they can on the union organizers and start to smear them incredibly. So, by the way, that same year, it fired 4 workers who were engaged in employee activism. This time around, it's not necessarily going to be as clear-cut as firing individual activists. A former Google engineer said, yes, they will continue to fire individual activists, but I think the more likely thing is that activists will face negative performance reviews, being told that they're not team players or that they're not positive about the company. We saw some of these things with Dr. Timnit Gebru. So, there's going to be a lot of pushback. Obviously, until a union is organized, and regardless of what you think about unions, without them, individual employees just do not have the leverage to really negotiate on a level playing field with a company as large as Google. When you really think about like $1 trillion company, what is one individual person to any of them? And so if this happens at Google, I would not be surprised to see other tech companies, the workers for those tech companies, start to push for the same thing. And I honestly don't think that that's a bad thing in any capacity. So there you go. And ladies and gentlemen, if you tuned in yesterday, I'm going to make the same statement that I did yesterday about CES 2021. CES 2021 is going to start January 11th. So next week, next Monday, we're going to have all of the coverage. We're going to have a lot of the companies that are displaying things out there on the program here after the event to talk about what it is that they debuted, kind of what they're doing, and hey, showcase the best stuff that they have. Leading up to that, we're going to try to avoid some of the spoilers, some of the leaks, and rather we're going to leave that to CES itself, because a lot of some of these companies try to get out. Yesterday it was LG, today it was Dell. If you'd like to check that out, we highly recommend that you do. But we're going to wait for the full-fledged experience that should be coming at CES 2021. So you can definitely check that out. Okay. So that's my statement on that. Now, story number 2, because that was just our first story. Story number 2. Let's get another update on. So that was the update on the Alphabet. I keep wanting to say Amazon. The Alphabet Workers Union. It's a thing now. It's a minority union. 230 members. Probably going to grow, or it's going to be just crushed by Google. We'll find out which one. Obviously, though, it would not be a good look for Google to bust up that kind of thing. But obviously, the short-term negative publicity might be completely preferable to a long-term union within their ranks. So now, let's do story number 2. And this is another update because yesterday we were talking about the spectacular rise of Bitcoin. It made just headlines all over the place back in 2016, 2017, 2018, I believe, when it rose all the way up to just shy of $20,000. Now, Bitcoin is doing its thing again, where it has fallen. So back in 2018, rose to just shy of $20,000. Immediately fell down to its $3,300. It was like an 80% drop. Really, really incredible to see. And now we started paying attention when Bitcoin rose all the way up to just shy of $35,000, and now, it has fallen yet again to it's now currently at $33,000. And I'm very curious as to kind of what's going to happen with its kind of with its price, because today alone it has fallen 5% and it has climbed 5% yet again. Just talking about, let's see, when was this? Just at 10 a.m. it started to claim back some of its losses, and this cryptocurrency has swung about 10% in just a matter of hours. It's really insane to see what it is that it's doing. It's I don't even know how to explain it. But yeah, it saw a spectacular rise all the way up to $35,000. It fell down. Let's see, they plunged 17% on Monday in its biggest single day decline since March. It was below $30,000 and obviously just hit a record high of $35,000. By the way, so I'm getting a better picture on this. It fell 18% yesterday, climbed back 24%, and is trading now just back under what it was a little bit ago. This kind of volatility is, I don't know. I'm glad I'm not in Bitcoin. At the same time, I know that it's up so much, but man, it's pretty incredible to see. So, yep, and of course, we talk about Ethereum. That was just a little update. It dropped a lot yesterday when we were talking about it, and now it's back up 6% just today. 6% just today. I don't know. That's a whole can of worms. Okay, so that's story number 2. Bitcoin doing things. I guess that's the update. Story number 3. We can take this a couple of ways, and let's do something fun, and then we'll head into the meaty stuff, but something fun indeed. Conspiracy theorists. They are, I guess, in serial terms, they're the Fruit Loops. They're crazy. yeah, and they have a lot to, they have their own agenda to push. And ladies and gentlemen, they will, conspiracy theories, when you just kind of take reality and you just say, you know what, this alternate reality is kind of just better than anything else. And this goes with the COVID-19 vaccine, and it's not even so much that vaccines now cause autism or cause all these kinds of diseases or anything like that. And now it's not even about 5G causing cancer and 5G scrambling people's brains and that whole thing. No, now this next one is that the COVID-19 vaccine that supposedly is going that is being used in Italy contains a 5G chip that will be implanted into people who receive the vaccine. There you go. This is by a Twitter user claiming to show a diagram, and yeah, pretty crazy. They have a diagram that you can see here if you're watching the video portion. It's a schematic, has plenty of switches and actuators, and it's an electrical circuit. Well, yeah, it's an electrical circuit of a guitar pedal that they are saying is a COVID-19 5G chip diagram. Yep, saying that, and let's see, so they said that a viral image of what is purportedly a diagram of a 5G chip conspiracy theorists believe is part of the coronavirus is actually a circuit for a guitar pedal. The schematic, which is shared by the software engineer Mario Fusco on Twitter, reportedly went viral in Italy and Romania through various sources, including self-publishing platforms like Telegraph. There you go. Yeah. And they have a quote here saying that the Russians have managed to remove the nanochips from the Pfizer vaccine and have published a functional diagram. So they're blaming Pfizer now for doing this. They go on to say that the bass and treble elements control instructions that can be heard in the recipient's brain, as well as controls to overwhelm the immune system. That's right. And yeah. You can turn off people's immune systems. You can control their brains. You can do everything with this guitar pedal diagram. Pretty strange. The volume control is used for the overall power of the chip, which is sometimes sensitive to your frequencies from personal vibrations. It depends on whether you are at the stage of happiness or generosity or sadness. It continues with that justification. However, the image is in fact of the Boss Metal Zone M2 guitar pedal, and which would explain the mention of the MT2 gain, the foot switch, the treble, the bass in the diagram, as well as the 5G frequency. That's right. They didn't even take the time to, relabel a lot of this stuff. It's pretty lazy when it comes to conspiracy theories, but there you have it. The coronavirus vaccine is an incredible achievement by humanity, and I can't believe people would, waste time having conspiracy theories on something so desperately needed. So there's that one. Okay, everyone. That was story number 3, and I thought that was just absolutely silly that they would do that. Story number 4, let's discuss... How about an issue that no one really thought about? Obviously, because it might already be too late to fix. But this is what open source advocates have been really pushing for in the last, 20 years, is that, source code should be made available to everyone. And the consequences of not doing that, you have instances like this. Saving video game source code treasures before it's too late. This is by Kyle Orland, Ars Technica. Over 90% of pre-2000 gaming source code may already be gone. Just to give you an idea of how big of a problem this was, as I recall, the fairly popular, the very popular relaunch of World of Warcraft Classic that happened just a couple of years ago, or it seems so long ago, like 2 years ago. Actually, it might have been even like a year ago. Anyways, the only way that they were able to reproduce that was they found the original files were found on one of the previous developers, and he had like a copy and a backup of it, of the file codes on an old hard drive that he used to work on. Like, he no longer worked with the company, but he contacted them, said, I have these backups and these, up in my attic. Would you like them? And they're like, oh, we didn't have those anywhere, because why would you bother storing the source code, even for one of the most popular games in the world? Why would you bother saving that, 15 years later? And lo and behold, man, did it become crucial for that entire project to actually, kind of happen. So they did it. It was good. And it really highlighted, to me at least, that no one's really curating this stuff. So let's go ahead and talk about this real quick. This is, again, Ars Technica. When most people think of preserving video game history, they probably imagine a museum full of boxed consoles and cartridges, or maybe a massive digital database of emulatable ROM files ripped from the original physical media. The Video Game History Foundation's latest project is looking past those kinds of basic archival projects and towards collecting and preserving the source code behind many classic games, saying that for a video game historian, an archaeological dig through source material is the next best thing to time travel. A really good source repository is the closest you're ever going to get to being a fly on the wall during a game's development. And the 90s were a particularly fun time, the 80s and 90s, I would say, because resources were still very limited. You had to do a lot of kind of tricks, and you had to save memory space. The amount of addressable memory that anyone, really had available to them was so insanely small that you couldn't imagine really reproducing, rewriting from scratch. First of all, it wouldn't even be the same game, because it's not. It's just a reproduction. But the source code is kind of a one-of-a-kind thing, because it was a product of its time and of its limitations. So being able to have that and look through that is going to be crucial for preserving software. And it seems so crazy, because, software is software, and you think you can just, copy and paste it somewhere onto a hard drive and back it up. But it needs to be even more than that. You don't just need the end result, the end of the game, the playable game. You need the executable, the thing that you can compile to make the game all over again. That's even more important. It's not just about knowing how, it's not just about knowing how the Model T car worked. It's about knowing how the factory put that car together and everything behind the scenes. Super important. So, digging through a game source code repository can help our archivists discover previously unknown content and information. Back in 2017, for instance, a video game History Foundation analysis found unused Disney character art and animation in the source code for the Genesis Aladdin game. Pretty cool. And little things like that that were never really released to the public, but there you go. And by the way, some of that unreleased content was in a folder called Trash. More recently, the team has discovered a source code for Nuclear Rush, a game prototype for the unreleased Sega Genesis virtual reality headset, and remade it with modern VR hardware. There you go. But it's not just about finding and restoring lost content. Looking at source code can help knowledgeable historians understand the creative process a lot better than they would otherwise, because it's the purest form of the game. It's the raw building block that made it up. They give an example that they talked about his time looking at the source code for The Secret of Monkey Island and learning that the language and tools behind LucasArts' famed Scum engine. Now when I play Scum game, I understand a little bit more. I speak the language a little better in knowing Scum. I just have this intuitive understanding of why creative decisions were or weren't made in this game. And I don't think I could possibly have that level of understanding without access to the Scum language. So, yeah, and let's see, let's go ahead. Yeah, perfect. So, yeah, unfortunately, games like Monkey Island, and by the way, the creator of the game actually donated the source code, are the exceptions. For games made before 2000, they estimate that about 90% of the source code, well, they're gone. And those are just the games that we care about. I'm not sure a lot of source code was saved at one time. Then an office move happened. Someone said, "What's this old DAT we have in a closet? It's probably backed up somewhere. Just toss it." I think the situation is pretty bad. It's only going to get worse as people actually archive this stuff, age out, and leave the industry, if not this mortal coil. There you go. So, yeah, it's no secret that the tech industry has almost like two generations, and there's not a lot of interplay among those. You know, the newer generation, they may care to almost like a passing fancy kind of deal, but they don't care to whenever someone's like, "Oh, COBOL, do you know how to code in COBOL? Do you know how to use a punch card? Do you know how to use all these different aspects of the old ways?" It's almost like Amish in a way, like the Amish way of making butter, the Amish way of building a barn. No, today you use power tools and however you make butter that way. We have definitely better ways of doing things, but the old ways should be preserved to some extent so that we know how it happened and where it came from. There's no point just losing it for no reason. So, they say that when early game source code survives, it's said it's often by pure happenstance. Individuals maybe brought their work home and happened to have that material. Saying that the source code for a previously unknown Days of Thunder prototype for the Nintendo Entertainment System, for instance, were found by digging through a pile of floppy disk in the basement of a deceased developer. He imagines that there are hundreds more game source code repositories like that, just floppies rotting in someone's basement, waiting for someone to recover. There you go. So with that being said, and of course this whole thing gets into copyright and who owns it, because when these developers donate the code, that's one thing, and the developers who own the copyrights have final say. That's great, because let's face it, Disney's 1993 Aladdin video game that was released for the Nintendo Entertainment System, how many copies a year do you think Disney is really selling of that game? My guess, between 0 and 0. But the Aladdin copyright is still very much in use. The Disney is very, very protective of its copyright. And when you think about everything associated with their product, I think they legally have to protect every part of that. So it becomes this question of, you want to save history and you want to preserve it, but at the same time, copyright, unfortunately, for something that is still so recent, we're not talking ancient Egypt here, for something that's so recent, the copyright issues are going to get in the way. They say that convincing companies to share those secrets for historical posterity, and to spend time and effort looking for it in the first place, can be an uphill battle. But that's starting to change in some corners, in part because of the industry-wide trend towards remakes and remasters for well-remembered games. In a game, for instance, like Grim Fandango Remastered, the only reason that product exists is because employees had things in their houses and people know who to ask. Without the source code, doing that kind of remastering work is much bigger lift. Saying that none of the games had available source code, meaning the team had to create an entire new engine and reverse engineer the games from extant ROM files. So yeah, companies are starting to climb onto the idea, or really understand the value of this kind of preservation, and Disney started to realize the value of its source code preservation, for instance, when it used raw material in the 2019 collection of remastered Aladdin and Lion King games. So there you go. And they have one aside here talking about the Giga Leak of Nintendo. I remember that back in July 2020, which seems like a lifetime ago. They said that this kind of leaking as closely guarded company secrets is not something we're trying to encourage. We're not asking people to conduct commercial theft for the sake of preservation necessarily, but it's something we have to be cognizant of. The director of this whole organization was distressed that the leak included potentially embarrassing personal details like, bad language used in source code or emails between developers, saying that that's immature of the individual to do that, but it also reflects an immaturity in the public understanding of how games are made and that things can get a little messy. So obviously Nintendo was not thrilled that so much of their original source code was leaked, and Nintendo in particular, when it comes to video games and source codes, let's face it, what is Nintendo if someone can recompile Mario, Pac-Man, all these different Nintendo games? They still want to keep those closely guarded. So there you go. That was story number 4, and I think that it's a topic that really doesn't get a lot of kind of presence in people's mind because, hey, it's just one of those things. It's very, 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 very hard to understand why so much of this code, which should be software, like I said, should just be copy and pasted somewhere, is being lost. But unfortunately, it is. So, okay, there's that story. Story number 4, story number 5. Let's talk about... There's one in Singapore, and it's something that you really have to be thinking of when it comes to all these countries. This was the concern that we had when contact tracing was first released. And contact tracing in the early days of coronavirus might have been a thing. Nowadays, in most parts of the world, let's face it, isn't that useful, at least not here in the United States, because just so many people have coronavirus. It really is running rampant. And even professional contact tracers, they are simply doing their best to say, oh, you've been exposed. Like, they're not even trying to get ahead of it. They're just trying to alert as many people as they can. Singapore, though, they had a nearly 80% uptake among the country's population, and Singapore's Trace Together app is one of the best examples of what successful centralized contact tracing effort can look like as countries across the world struggle to contain the coronavirus pandemic. To date, more than 4.2 million people in Singapore have downloaded the app or obtained the wearable device that the government offered to people. And you can see the wearable device there. It looks like a lanyard. Yeah. Well, it looks like a little plastic device at the end of a lanyard. Now, in contrast to Apple and Google's exposure notification system, which powers the majority of COVID-19 apps out there, they mentioned, including the ones put out by California and Germany, Singapore's Trace Together app and wearable uses the country's own internally developed Blue Trace protocol. And they mentioned that it relies on a centralized reporting structure wherein a user's entire contact log is updated to a server administered by a government health authority, and outside of Singapore, only Australia has so far adopted the protocol. So very centralized, very localized. This information is going to be very relevant to the people in that area. Now, in an update the government made to the platform privacy policy on Monday, it added a paragraph about how the police can use data collected through the platform, and that police can use the data. And that was the issue with Google and Apple and, kind of the government getting involved in this kind of thing. That the law enforcement, something that was meant for kind of public safety, public health, would be turned around and used by law enforcement to serve warrants, to do unrelated things that were not really in the best interest of public health, but would make their services, that would make their jobs easier. And looks like now in Singapore, they're doing exactly that. The paragraph says that Trace Together data may be used in circumstances where citizen safety and security is or has been affected, saying that authorized police officers may invoke criminal procedure code powers to request users to upload their Trace Together data for criminal investigations. Which, by the way, is exactly what you need to worry about when it comes to these contact tracing apps. Yes, public health and public safety, incredibly important. Knowing that you are now using a tracker that will log every step you take, everywhere you are, constantly, and law enforcement can ask for that information at any time or have that information shared with them. You don't even have to be in the loop on this one. Shared with them at any point. Pretty not good. So previous versions of the privacy policy made no mention of the fact that police could collect the data from the app, and in fact the website said data will only be used for COVID-19 contact tracing. They mentioned, and so with this being said, the government added the paragraph after Singapore's opposition party asked the Minister of State for Home Affairs if police could use the data for criminal investigations, saying that, quote, "We do not preclude the use of Trace Together data in circumstances where citizen safety and security is or has been affected." And by the way, they said this applies to all data as well. Personal liberties have definitely been infringed upon here in the United States after the Patriot Act, after the NSA. That's the whole thing with Edward Snowden and, kind of homeland security, protecting the American people, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Even though there hasn't really been any credible evidence that spying on hundreds of millions of Americans has made them any safer, but boy, has it made the police, very, very happy in their ability to sometimes even mismanage that data for themselves. So now they say that what's happening in Singapore is an example of the exact type of potential privacy nightmare that experts warned about might happen when you centralize the information in one place, which is why I liked what Google and Apple were doing. Not even that they're third party, but that they never really collected the data in any serious way. No, it was more about making everyone anonymous, but still giving the exact people that need the information that they need. So there you go. It's that is one of the most heart-wrenching things that I've heard on the show today. And that is just so much privacy being violated. Okay, So there's that story, story number 5, story number 6. And again, all these stories will be made available over at computeramerica.com underneath today's show notes. And speaking of privacy, this whole thing with SolarWinds looks like it's still amping up. And yeah, looks like, by the way, SolarWinds, if you don't know what happened there, it's worse. And I don't even recommend that you check it out now because, let's face it, it's only going to continue to get worse. So, okay. So instead of that one, let's talk about Jack Ma real quick. If you don't know who Jack Ma is, he is a multi-billionaire, founder of Alibaba. Think of him as almost as a Bezos, but from China. You know, he's big. He had incredible influence, or he has incredible influence. I shouldn't spoil the story, but yeah, he has incredible influence. He was part of the Ant Group, which was looking into really incubating China's some of their newest companies, and was worth is worth $58.4 billion. It's crazy. He's one of the wealthiest people in China. You know, he's a 56-year-old, grew up under humble circumstances in communist China. Ma famously told people that how he failed twice his university entrance exams and was rejected from every job he applied for after college, including KFC. So, humble beginnings. Ma is a quintessential rags to riches story. After many early setbacks, along with a scrappy team of 18 people and $60,000, he co-founded the Alibaba in the city of Hangzhou in 1999. 20 years later, Alibaba boasts about 100,000 employees. And again, $58 billion later, a personal net worth, it's pretty good. Here's the problem. After he went public with the, I think with criticism over the Chinese communist governments, well, the last time anyone has actually seen or heard from him has been about 2 months. And now people are starting to wonder what happened to Jack Ma, because he's usually pretty public, you know, he's very successful, very rich, almost like a poster child of what was possible within China. You know, someone who can be so impoverished and, you know, come up and be one of the wealthiest people in the world. China loves that kind of thing, but not when he doesn't toe the line. So the Washington Post reported that prominent Chinese entrepreneurs who receive press attention are more likely to be investigated or arrested compared to those who shy away from media coverage. Ma ominously and presciently told a group of rural teachers in 2016, "I think among the richest men in China, few have good endings." In late October 2020, Ma criticized China's banking system, deeming it run by pawn shop mentality during a conference. His speech preceded the planned initial public offering of Ant Group. Since then, the Chinese government has taken action against Ma and his companies, including an antitrust investigation into Alibaba. So think about that. He went public and said that the Chinese government has a pawn shop mentality, and I believe what he meant by that was, you know, kind of, I give you something and, you know, kind of a value, we give you the money, and, you know, it's not on fair terms. It's the lending is very much you know, for the government, not based on any kind of like merit, but it's what can you give me in return for me lending you the money. Almost like cronyism at the highest levels of the Chinese banking system. And that cronyism ends up being, well, very, very bad for Chinese entrepreneurship, because the only people who get it, who get the loans and get, you know, really the capital to start their businesses are people who either know someone within the Chinese government or are very, very susceptible to pressure from the Chinese government. Now, Ma, comfortable with the spotlight, hasn't made any public appearance over the last number of weeks. He hasn't tweeted in 3 months and was a no-show and replaced as a final episode of his talent show Africa's Business Heroes, which is somewhat like Shark Tank. The disappearance of wealthy business professionals isn't unusual in China and has been occurring for a while. The article mentions back in 2017. In The Independent, Chinese billionaires and CEOs keep disappearing in state-sanctioned abductions. Further, putting a cherry on top of the idea that, you know what? In America, business has a stranglehold on legislation. Large companies, lobbying efforts, insiders that come from private industry and then move to lobbying and then move to actually policy making, it's very, it's very obvious that when, drafting the new rules for how things like Facebook should be regulated, and then they give Facebook a spot at the table for how these things should happen. It's very obvious that business has, very, very strong ties to government. Here in China, well, the Chinese government decides who is a successful business and who is a successful business person, and not the other way around. And if you don't agree, or if you condemn the Chinese government in any way, good luck staying in power for long, because they can certainly make it so that you are not in power for long. So I really do hope Jack Ma is okay. From what I understand, he's actually a very generous person. And yeah, I don't know. I am very curious as to where Jack Ma actually is. So, okay. So, and actually just found an update here from CNBC saying that he's not actually missing. He's just, multiple outlets published reports on Ma's elusive whereabouts this week. An IPO from his Ant Group was suspended by Stock Exchange Shanghai and Hong Kong. Essentially, I guess after the term, after, as we mentioned, he was critical of the government, he decided to lay low. So, let's see, reported last week that Ma has not been seen in public anywhere since October. Shortly after, Ma's Ant Group saw a record-setting initial public offering, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. He says that he's been laying low, whatever that means. Although super low would be being abducted. So, who knows? There you go. So, there's a story. Jack Ma may be missing, may not be, may just be laying low. I have no idea, but certainly don't want to run afoul of the Chinese government. They'll get you. They certainly will. Okay, everyone. And let's see, we have time for like one or two more stories. Let's talk about real quick. Okay. Comcast, everyone's favorite company. Not like they were voted the country's most hated company 2 years running, but yeah, Comcast. The data cap blasted by lawmakers says that it will expand into 12 more states. If you don't know what data cap is, imagine you're using the internet and then someone says you're using too much internet, and then they shut it off. Enter the data cap. So they said that dozens of state lawmakers from Massachusetts urged Comcast to halt enforcement of its 1.2 terabyte monthly data cap, saying that the cap hurts low-income people during the pandemic and is unnecessary because of the healthy network capacity, which one would argue, COVID making a lot of people work from home, entertain themselves at home, stream more content, download more content, upload more content. The network has never been and will never be probably under as much strain, stress, and pressure as it has been for the past year, and everything is still working just fine. Well, that doesn't stop them, saying that network capacity is not an issue for Comcast or a valid excuse to charge customers more, which is always the go-to reason why data caps are enforced. Comcast itself claims it has plenty of capacity across its network, including areas where no caps are currently imposed. It is inconceivable that Comcast would choose to impose the cap and fee plan during a pandemic when many Massachusetts residents are forced to work and attend school from home via the internet. So lawmakers published a letter saying that, hey, please don't do this, Comcast. And the lawmaker also pointed out a statement by Comcast executive Tony Werner, who said that the increased broadband traffic caused the pandemic has all been within the capability of the network. So why would you need to impose caps if everything is working as intended? They mentioned that Comcast expanded its 1.2 terabyte monthly data cap to its entire 39 state territory this month after 4 years of enforcing a cap on 27 states. So the rest of its states get the data cap. Now, more users exceeding 1.2 terabytes. And I got to say, I think I can even check my network activity here from my home office. And perfect, didn't open there. I gotta say, obviously for Computer America, I upload a lot of stuff, I download a lot of stuff, I stream a lot of content, I'm, constantly using data. And, I'm right at that bottleneck, in all honesty. Looking here last 30 days, and this is just for one user. This is for Ben at Computer America. I'm already pushing 1.2 terabytes of data that I have streamed or utilized on the internet. And that's not including anyone else in my household. This data cap is extremely easy to hit, especially if you are, really focused on using the internet. So 1.2 might seem like a lot to a lot of people, but in a 30-day period, it's not that hard to hit. Now, Comcast charges an extra $30 per month for unlimited data or $25 for the Xfi Complete add-on package that includes Comcast gateway devices and unlimited data. Customers who don't upgrade must pay $10 for every additional 50 gigs, up to a maximum of $100 each month. Comcast is phasing in charges gradually, so customers in newly capped areas will start seeing overage charges in April 2021. I wish I had a time machine, or I had the perseverance to chug through old Computer America episodes, because when data caps were a bigger thing with net neutrality and all that kind of stuff back in 2015, 2016, I called this, and a lot of much smarter people than myself called this, when it came to data caps. It was not about network stability. It was not about network strength or fair usage or anything like that. It was about another source of income. And then even on top of that, I even said that the way that they're going to do it is that they're going to set the limits extremely high, so that they're going to say, only the most egregious users are going to hit this cap. It's going to be fine. Everything's okay. And then once the cap is in place, then they slowly start to bring it down more and more and more. Because, right now, 1.2 terabytes, if they can get away with that, they can drop it down to 1.1 in 6 months. 6 months later, they can drop down to 1 terabyte. 6 months later, 900 gigs. And they're going to drop it down until probably just about the top 10% of people consistently hit that overage. And as long as their revenue continues to go up, overage fees continue to pay for themselves, or they sign up for this extra $30 per month unlimited plan, as soon as their revenue starts to dip a little bit, it's going to be another lever that they can pull to squeeze more money out of their user base that, let's face it, in many areas, there is no competition. If you don't like it from Comcast, too bad. In most places, you get one, if you are lucky, 2 different options for your internet provider. It's Yeah, and again, to even recap the beginning of this, the CEO of the company themselves even said, with COVID, with pandemic levels of traffic, everything has been operating within our normal usage. Everything is perfectly fine. This is not about, this is not about any kind of network stability or improvements. This is about profits. And Comcast is losing a lot of them thanks to streaming, thanks to television going on the decline, thanks to really home landlines going away. They're looking for ways to increase their profit margin on internet, and they definitely see this as their next big push. Everyone, sorry to leave you on such a sour note. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for everyone out there for listening. And hey, have a great day. Thank you so much. We'll be back here tomorrow, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. We'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone. Bye, chat room.